you've got an idea, but it's that piece. What would you advise to that person that then they have an idea, they've got bills to pay, they've got a family, that they've got commitments, responsibilities, and they, like, you couldn't just give it all up, in their head, they couldn't just switch and then go and, have a year where they try to build that business. What would you say to someone in that capacity?
Yeah, I would start out by saying, know that you can do it. If you have a viable idea, where you're solving a problem, you can do it. Don't feel like, I mean, if you're thinking about this, and every entrepreneur goes through this, as when you're a young entrepreneur, or let's say a new entrepreneur, young or old, I think everyone goes through the same stage where you're, maybe you've got a job, you got kids, and you're busy, and you're thinking, how am I going to pull this off? I don't have enough money. I don't have enough education. Everyone's telling me I'm crazy. Welcome to the club. Every other entrepreneur in the world pretty much has heard that, so you're in real good company of some really wealthy people. And pretty much every entrepreneur that's ever succeeded at any level has heard that from people and thought that to themselves. Whether you wake up at 3 a.m, you're driving to your job and you're thinking, there's no way I can do this. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, or I don't have enough, whatever. Know that you can do it, because after interviewing over 1,300 self-made millionaires, these are face-to-face interviews. We didn't have Zoom like this, back in the day. These are face-to-face interviews. And that's a lot over 37 years. I can tell you that some of the people I interviewed, you would know, they're famous people. There's probably out of 1,300, or probably maybe 100, 150 that were pretty famous, and some very famous, and some really gifted, that you would think, wow, these people are just geniuses. That might've been 25 of them. And the rest of them were people just like us, just regular people who had jobs, who had kids, who had no money, and they got this crazy dream, and they're waking up at 3 a.m. going, this is the greatest idea, but everyone's telling me I can't do it. You're in good company. That's what we all thought. And these really big ones thought that too. And they're no different than us, most of them. They're normal, average people that didn't think they could do it sometimes. So no, you can do it. You don't need any more intelligence or education, most likely, than that you need to succeed. You can do it with what you have. Know that right off the bat, because if you don't lock in, if you're not mentally tough enough, I think, to lock in with that, most of the time you are going to have doubts, probably, but that's okay. If you have doubts, we all have doubts. But if you're locked in, you keep taking action, you're probably going to make it. And if you don't make it on this deal, you'll make it on the next one, or the next one after that.
I love that, Steve. What you just said is going to change lives. Literally. I know you've been changing lives for years and years and years, but that is the piece. Someone can take that tangibly and walk out today and hear this conversation. Someone that's listening right now can go out there and take those next steps just because of what you just said. That is it.
Well, you know how it is, Tim. It's like, once you make it, once you get to the mountaintop, whatever that is for you as an entrepreneur, then it's easy. You take a deep breath and you say, okay, well, now I've gotten to wherever I wanted to go, whatever that is. And then it's different. Then when you look in the mirror at 3 a.m. and you have a new idea, you think, I've done this before, I can do it again. It's a lot easier after you've gotten one big success. But before that big success, you can feel like a crazy person because everyone's telling you're crazy and you shouldn't be doing this. And you're being a lot of times I hear people will say, and you probably heard this as well, and people say, well, I'm my wife or my husband's mad at me because I'm not spending enough time with the kids, or I'm not, and they guilt you into this too. And it's something you've got to fight. You just have to. There's just no other way around it. But, know that once you get to that first success, you're going to take a breath of fresh air like you haven't ever breathed before. Like you haven't been breathing in 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you take a breath of fresh air. That's the freshest breath you'll ever take. I mean, I believe anyway, because it's all that anxiety, all that doubt, all the people around you that said you couldn't do it possibly, all the negative, all the self-doubt, all that stuff is just goes away. It literally just goes away. I mean, it's a cure. And all of a sudden you look in the mirror and you see someone different. You think, well, maybe I can pull this next one off because I pulled the last one off. And you might be right, you might be wrong. But even if you fail the next one, you'll probably succeed after that because you have that confidence now. No one can take it away from you ever again. But getting that first one is the toughest. That's why the first million's the hardest to make. It's about belief more than the actual money.
Because you've got to believe before it actually happens, and you've got to go through.
Yeah, you have to suspend your disbelief effectively. You've got to just put that out of your mind. And it's not easy. It's easy to say on an interview like this, but it's hard to do. We've all been through it where you're doubting yourself and you're thinking, am I crazy? I mean, can I really do this? I mean, maybe I should just do what everyone's telling me to do and get them off my back. And every entrepreneur, I think, has gone through that. All these interviews, this is what they talk about, Tim, 37 years. They talk about all their failures. That's what their doubts and their worries and their concerns and the guilt they felt and the friends they lost and all these different things. And then at the end, you knew they hit the home run because that's why you're interviewing them. But they mostly spent, because that's what I get interviewed about all the time in the press. I'll say, well, what do these rich people talk about? They talk about their failures almost the whole time, because that's what they spend most of their time doing before they, hit the big time. And so that's really what they value, is that fight. Because there's nothing like that fight to bring out the best in an entrepreneur. You have to go through it. It seems like I'd be afraid almost at this point, looking back 30 years. I failed, of course, so many times in the beginning, like everyone almost does. But I would be afraid to look back and think that I succeeded at the first, 3 or 4 businesses. Because if I wouldn't have had that strength that you get from failure. You just have to have it to succeed at a higher level.
So that's where the mentally tough piece comes in. That's where that resilience comes in. It's being able to stick with your vision through all the stuff you just said, through the guilt, through the tough times, through the extra kind of bizarre things that you need to do as an entrepreneur that no one else is doing. Everyone else is sleeping. You're up. You're fighting every day for your vision, for your goals, for your dreams. With that, then, say you've now moved someone into that and they've experienced a little bit of success. What starts to happen where part of what you talk about is around this consciousness around money, this abundance around money, this feeling of money being a game. And I like to talk about this one, but especially with you. I mean, this conversation is a dream come true for me, because when I first found your work, I was in a studio, didn't even have another room. It wasn't a 1-bed studio. It was just a studio. We were a young family, all in there in a bunch of debt. And we've moved our lives up and up and up. And I relate to the change when you start to experience a bit of success. Something changes with how you perceive money, I think. Can you talk a little bit around the idea of fun and that spirit that it has?
Yeah, I think you can go one or two ways. That's the way I've seen it over the years, at least my experience is that it can, if the person didn't fight hard enough, or they just have a predisposition for sort of I don't want to say or just have an ego problem. It can go to the ego pretty fast. Like all of a sudden, I've succeeded, and now I'm thinking, boy, I'm really smart. I am really something else. Everything I do touches, turns to gold, and I'm just the greatest thing in the world, and all that. And that's very dangerous as an entrepreneur, because the world doesn't really care. It just goes on whether you fail or not. And your next venture, they don't care about if you made your last venture or not. They just, they're just doing their thing. And so you go out now all of a sudden you're presenting to the world this ego-based consciousness, and the world just loves to eat up people like that. They don't like big egos. And so it can go that way. But if it goes the right way, which is what you're talking about, Tim, where all of a sudden, you get some success, and then you start to see money as a game, and and I think part of that consciousness is you start to realize that it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't make you any better of a person because you're rich or you're not rich. I mean, it doesn't make you any smarter really than anybody else. It makes you, understand that you fought really hard and you had a good idea and it worked. And, luckily things came together and you had some opportunity, and you probably had some great mentors, and you should be grateful, of course, right, if you succeed, because there are people that helped you. And then all of a sudden you start to see it just as a game. How many people can I help? What can I do to take this to the next level and maybe help somebody that's struggling, knowing what you went through personally to struggle to build your business? Maybe you can help someone else out. It changes it. Now all of a sudden you're playing for fun instead of playing for survival. It's very different. It's a lot more fun too, of course, as you can imagine. So.